Okay, welcome and good evening to our very first Curator's Commentary. This is a supplemental piece to movie club that I just decided to start experimenting with on this series. I've actually recorded these commentary tracks kind of out of order. I started with The Goonies because it was a film I knew a whole lot about and felt like I had a whole lot to say about, and it was something that I really enjoyed doing. So I ended up doing it again for Pan's Labyrinth, which is our third of the official selections for the summer movie series for Movie Club. I did that with my good friend Gavin Slay, who was one of the co-founders of Movie Club, and that was a lot of fun. And so just now I'm finally doing the Jaws commentary track just before the screening happens tomorrow night. It is currently Tuesday, 2:42 p.m. And I'm about to screen Jaws and do a commentary track about it. Just so we're all on the same page, I'm currently looking at the Universal logo, which is 11 seconds into the film. If you have a digital copy, if you have a disc copy, hopefully you're watching it on a Blu-ray in a nice high definition transfer. And if so, usually on the Blu-ray will allow you to kind of look at the time code, which is super helpful. But regardless, the easiest way to explain if you don't have access to time code is the Universal logo has just appeared and it just stopped moving. So that's right where we are. But it doesn't matter if you're just a couple seconds off. There is no visual element to this. It's just a commentary track to play. And instead of doing a really long-winded intro, like I've been known to do, I'm just going to get started. So get your remote, grab yourself some popcorn, your favorite beverage, because we're about to kick off our screening of Jaws. I'm hovering over the play button right now, and I'm going to... on go after one, hit play. So, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Right off the bat, what I love about this film is that even with the logos still going by, you have all this incredible sound design that's already getting you in the headspace of the film that you're about to see. And then immediately you get that iconic John Williams theme under the opening credits. It's still crazy to me that something so simple is so effective at convincing your brain that something bad's about to happen. There's also quite a bit of other stuff in the score that we'll talk about as it pops up, as opposed to me trying to describe all the different things that Williams is doing. Obviously, a lot of this is what we're about to see. The excitement and the adventure is due to editor Verna Fields, whose name we just saw, who really helped a young Spielberg make his mark with some dynamic editing and helping to fill in the gaps when the prop shark didn't work. Her editing, her contributions to the film helped make it as scary as it was, and she actually worked hands-on with Spielberg to make some of the jump scares work especially well, and I'll talk about those as they come up. This is technically Spielberg's second theatrical film. Sugarland Express came out a year prior, and his TV film, which is technically a feature as well, but didn't go to theatrical release, Duel, which is fantastic if you haven't seen it. It's like a 90-minute car chase on steroids, and it's brilliant. And effectively, Duel's kind of a dry run for the unseen villain, the unseen scare that is so well done. Another thing is this shot right here is kind of redone, reused, and repurposed in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It kind of introduces us to that world in that film, which, controversial statement, might be my favorite Spielberg film. I love this gorgeous, I think it's supposed to be a sunrise shot. Maybe a sunset. Regardless, I think it's beautiful to look at. I could only dream of having a shot this good in such an early film for me. And of course, here's that iconic theme to let us know that things are about to go horrifically wrong. And despite this film being PG, you immediately get the sense that this is not going to be a kind film, an easy film to watch. Spielberg also has a lot to thank to his cinematographer Bill Butler on this film, who is obviously fantastic and was really helpful in helping capture the vision that Spielberg had. And then just the silence of the sound design, where the beach sounds and all these different elements slowly start to overtake what we're hearing. J.J. Abrams did a TED Talk in the early 2000s after he started Lost, and he talked about what really makes this film and a lot of Spielberg films special. Another Spielberg trademark right here is that dialogue's happening in two different places at once, and they're talking over one another. This is I think some people would be critical of this, but in reality, it's Spielberg trying to bring a sense of reality to the film world, in that in real life people talk over one another. This also happens in like French New Wave films, and especially films. Well, now I've forgotten his name. Good Lord. Yes, Noah Baumbach. God, I can't remember. I cannot believe I forgot his name. but his films typically have dialogue that flows over one another, and it feels very real. And I think that's because that's how people actually talk in real life. What I was saying about J.J. Abrams, he was talking about what makes this film and a lot of other Spielberg films special is that really it's the characters that make you care about them. So whether it's Roy Scheider here as Chief Brody, who really brings us into the story, makes us care about him and the well-being of his family. It's scenes with the humans in between these horrific attacks by the sharks that really make you care about this movie, and it's what makes this movie special. Of course, you also have to think of the fantastic performances from Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss. Richard Dreyfuss, who, when he appears, I'll talk a little bit more about his character, his style, and some fun facts regarding that. I love this little reveal with the hand because it's not as gruesome as it could be and leaves a lot more to the imagination, which this film will both do and not do later. I love this oneer, which takes us from the front door and the reaction shots of what the police officer and this young man have seen. Obviously, this iconic bit is replicated when Hopper types up the missing persons report in the first season of Stranger Things for Will Byers. But Spielberg's oneers are pretty fantastic, and this is a brilliant one right here. Every Frame of Painting does a great video on the Spielberg oneer because they're designed to not be seen. I'm fairly certain that's Every Frame of Painting. I'm going to look it up to verify that before... Yes, it is Every Frame of Painting, which if you haven't seen that entire video series, you're missing out. I love the music that's just a part of the scene for a rehearsal for a parade that fits with the scene so perfectly. I love the mayor's suit here. And this is one of the other brilliant oneers right here on this boat. On the ferry. It's just a brilliant, simple way to tell the story. And do it in as few cuts as possible. later when Brody gets criticized for not revealing this information earlier, the fact that pretty much this entire town administration has conspired against him really makes me personally angry. As Tony Zhu talks about in the Every Frame of Painting series, what makes the Spielberg one so special is that typically they don't call attention to themselves. They're pretty simple, and they make different compositions of shots within the same take, essentially. Obviously, I'm referring to the fantastic series from Taylor Ramos and Tony Zhu, Every Frame of Painting. If you have not seen it, you are missing out. It's completely done. Ended in 2017 officially. And there's only a couple videos. You can technically binge through these short and concise videos in a single day. I love how this scene is designed to be as confusing and disorienting as possible, because your attention is much like Chief Brody's looking in the water for the shark, because you've seen the trailer. You know what you're buying into. You know the bad things that are about to happen. And this quick cutting style with having people walk in front of the camera and then cutting, so that way there's a transition to a closer shot or a different angle altogether, is kind of brilliant. This is a split diopter shot, obviously. Pretty great. This is one of the cutest kids ever in a horror movie. I don't believe we ever see that dog again, so I think we're supposed to just assume that they killed a dog. I mean, I can check, does the dog die real quick, but I'm fairly certain that's the impression we're supposed to get. This, and obviously a death a little bit later. God, I love that push in. This shot, to me, reminds me a lot of the 1946 shot where we get to see Jimmy Stewart's character in It's a Wonderful Life, isolated completely by himself, and just the tragedy of that shot, because you know what's going to happen. The fact that a kid and a dog dies so early in this film, I think, shows just how, I mean, that's something that, like, even now is kind of taboo, even in horror films. It's kind of something that you're just not supposed to do, for whatever reason. This unwillingness of these people to... God, that's still unpleasant now. It reminds me, I guess, of the mask ordinance that's happening right now, and how people refuse to wear it, despite the fact that it's for the betterment of everyone, and that by closing the beaches, we would be able to solve the problem faster. I recently went on a binging spree of the adaptations of John Godey's novel, The Taking of Pelham 123. The 1974 film, which would have come out just a year prior to this, also stars Robert Shaw. But in that film, he's a villain, and he's just fascinating to watch. And his British accent comes out a little bit more in that film. But every time I've seen him in a film, I really love the performance. But as I was saying, it seems that this film holds an even closer parallel to now than ever before, in that people are making decisions that don't benefit them in the long run, selfishly. And it's these moments kind of small comedy throughout the film that I think make the more horrific things a little bit more palatable, for lack of a better word. I love this moment with the book. And just the conversations between these two. I love the relationship between these two people. Such a good moment. Because obviously right now we're about to have the more terrifying scene. Once again, being very economical and very creative in how not to show the shark. Which, as I said in my intro, is probably the part of the film that has aged the worst. I love these cuts between the book and Martin's glasses. Another thing that I think Gavin was the one who delivered the line in the intro, that shark attacks don't happen all that often. Obviously, this is gross. And we're getting to see like pictures of this stuff, the horrific things that like the aftermath of shark attacks, right before obviously this happens. It really puts us on edge and makes us terrified for what will happen to these two people. Putting the camera this low and in the water really puts us in the shoes of these characters, and I always found that so interesting because it just elevates the scene so much more. Obviously the turning around of the wooden platform is such a creative way to show us, oh yeah, this is a serious. Because that really is what horror movies are all about, the building up of tension, and then there has to be a release, either through a scare or through something actively happening, like a joke. There's always got to be a beat at the end. If that doesn't happen, then the scares just continue to build up, and you just feel dread throughout the whole film, and you're always on edge for the rest of the movie, so the scares don't hit as hard. And here we go. One of my favorite characters in the entire film. This is Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, who returns in the next Spielberg film, which is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. As I said, that might be my favorite Spielberg. I told Gavin when we were watching this movie that one of the main reasons that I wanted a jean jacket like this, or just a denim jacket, was because of Hooper. I love his outfit. Pretty much all of his outfits in this film. The beanie, the denim jacket, the jeans. This goofy little officer is always fun to watch. That was what we would call a there and back again shot. We start with Chief Brody close up on the phone. He turns to and the camera follows him to a wider shot, so we get to see the other police officer in the window. And then as Hooper introduces to the scene, the other officer leaves, we move back to the phone. That's a 2-shot right here. Another fantastic oneer from Spielberg. Being dynamic and economic with how he's telling his story. If you've ever gone fishing with a bunch of rednecks around you at the same lake, this is very, very much how it is in real life. Oh, as I was saying earlier, shark attacks don't happen all that often in real life. They typically only happen if people are in their habitat or are disturbing them, or obviously they are bleeding, and the shark is hungry. It's kind of a huge confluence of events that go into it, but this film did exacerbate problems and probably caused a lot of shark deaths that were unnecessary. I love Hooper's reaction to this how he goes in calm, collected, and sees the body, and immediately becomes out of breath and frantic. It tells the audience, despite not being able to see what's on this table, love that arrow in the shark. It makes next to no sense. As if they thought that would be what took the shark down. And then Quint's over here laughing in the far distance. That line delivery is so silly. I love how they don't have to do cutaways to reaction shots when you shoot this as a oneer. You just dynamically stage the actors you need to react. Murray Hamilton is a fantastic actor as Mayor Vaughn. That's a real hit. Obviously, I feel bad for Miss Kittner. She's going through something incredibly horrific, but and there's no way she could know this. But the fact that Chief Brody is kind of put in the position to take full responsibility for this when pretty much the entire town conspires against him to keep this quiet and comes up with an alternate explanation, and then sits back and lets him take the blame for this, I think is incredibly horrific and evil. might have just heard my fan kick on. I apologize if you can hear that in the background. And this is the scene that Abrams talks about, how brilliant it is. The cutest kid in horror outside of Andy Barclay in the Child's Play series. What a great moment. As you'll see, this tie looks a lot like the tie that I wear every week in the intro videos. That's not on accident at all. I think this scene is so fantastic. It starts to set up the stakes, and we get to see a lot more of Brody's character and see why he ends up choosing to get on the boat in the third act of the film. Chief of police. Yep. I would have been sure to have worn a tie clip here because I wouldn't want my tie inside of a shark, if at all possible. Another great way to not show how gruesome this is, even though it's probably not that well built of a prop shark. But through sound design and through creative camera placement, we don't have to see any real bad stuff. We just get the implication. And of course you cut to him on the boat, which I think is another... That's the other thing I think about this movie that's so brilliant to me. Not only are there some genuinely scary moments in this horror film, but Spielberg knows how to lighten the mood, but also how to make, along with the help of Verna Fields, who deserves a lot more credit than she gets for this film, is that there's so many cuts and funny jokes that are built into the film. This is the other famous scene I was mentioning at the beginning, that Verna Fields had a lot of say in helping craft it into the horror moment that it is, the iconic, terrifying moment that it is. And it's just after we get Hooper underwater to check out this boat that has been sunk. I love how beautifully crafted these shots are. Despite the fact that this is very much a horror moment, like this one right here. So this hyperventilating that Dreyfus is doing right now is actually a good trick for holding your breath and being able to stay under the water a lot longer. So in the event that you're about to be submerged, it's helpful to start hyperventilating, because it allows you to trap more oxygen inside your bloodstream and inside your lungs, so that way when you go under, you can stay under longer. Just a helpful tip. Hopefully you never have to use it. I love the way that the camera moves in this. That's the moment. This is actually filmed in Verna Field's swimming pool, that moment, which allowed Spielberg and Fields to recut it until it delivered the maximum scare. Another fantastic oneer here. It starts pretty subtle, and then we're going to get a really cool reveal towards the end of this. That's one of my favorite lines in the entire film. And here is my favorite reveal, this sign. And I love how the mayor is more concerned about this. Hooper is in the same boat as I am right now. Hooper is me whenever I'm confronted by a problem that I can't solve. Just resigning myself. love how terrifying just this arrival of all these tourists is. I haven't mentioned it yet, but obviously this is filmed in the little town of Martha's Vineyard, up in New York. It's a brilliant little town that reprised its role here just a little bit later the following year in Jaws 2. Not good movie. This is a great tracking shot that starts in a medium shot and moves to this incredibly extra wide shot as Brody walks through and then moves back towards the camera. And Mayor Vaughn can't just sit on his laurels and let people enjoy this town as they should be able to. So he's going to force this local into the water to convince other people it's safe. He's willing to throw other people, ironically, to the sharks, as that phrase is, but not do anything risky himself. He's the quintessential politician. It's so tough to watch Brody want to be a good dad and also try and be a good dad by protecting them. It was obviously the couple from earlier. I have to imagine that this camera got kicked multiple times while trying to film any of these water scenes. Injured Injured, not killed, injured, of course. And this is where we see the chaos that happens anytime something like this happens. I don't know if you've ever been in the water when there's been a whistle like this. It's not a fun feeling. But of course, that's not the real threat. This isn't one of my other favorite shots in the film. And there's our first real glimpse of the shark. It's barely anything. Under the water, obscured. Another quick cut. And of course, we get this great shot of the leg falling to the floor, severed. That truly communicates the stakes for us. And now that there's another kid in danger, you truly get concerned, because this film has already shown its willingness to kill children. Luckily, Michael has some good friends. But this shot where they slowly reveal that he is both of his legs is another great touch. I'm not entirely certain, but I think this is the moment that Brody decides that he's sick of this and is going to go and face his greatest fear, which is being on the open ocean, being in the water. This is the one moment, I think, where we get to see Vaughn act like a human, like a real human. And I think the sequel does him injustice by taking this moment away from him, by him immediately returning to the worst version of himself. I haven't seen Robert Shaw in a bit. I think that's one of the other iconic lines from this film. It was nice to see Robert Shaw again after all of this. In just a moment, we're about to see my second favorite shot in the entire film. I think it's such a brilliant piece of work from Bill Butler again. this just goes to show, before we get too far into this third and final act of the film, that Robert Shaw's Quint is kind of unhinged and is effectively the Ahab of the story. I love Hooper's contempt for Quint throughout this final scene before they leave. They're much of the third act. One of the other great oneers in this film. And here we are, the second favorite shot in the film. It's just to show that this voyage is kind of doomed. What's brilliant about this shot, it's clearly filmed on a different vessel than the Orca. We get to see just how sick this movement would make someone who doesn't do well on boats. This is what we would call a setup for the final confrontation of the film. Here we see Quint being nicer to Brody than he's ever going to be to Hooper. here we're going to get some of the most varied music in the entire film. There's quite a bit of adventure themes in the final act. And some of my favorite pieces from the film, from the score by John Williams, who, I mean, it's an understatement of all time to say that he's pretty iconic. Someone argued this is quite phallic. I would be one of those people. I think this entire third act is what would be traditionally considered pretty masculine. The combination of these three very different men with very different ideas about what it means to be masculine. I love that this wasn't filmed on a tank on a soundstage and that this was actually done for real. Which is only the kind of crazy idea that would happen with, early director in his 20s. I think what's so brilliant about this third act, obviously you have to thank the writer of the original book, Peter Benchley, and Carl Gottlieb, who did all the rewrites and created a nice, tight 2-hour story. It's the conflict, the butting of heads of these different ideas of masculinity that is so brilliant. And some of the shots in this third act are some of the best stuff in the film. They really set him up to be Captain Ahab, and no bare bones about it. That's exactly what he's supposed to be. And right now we're about to have my favorite line in the entire film. Once again, showing some of the brilliant timing and comedic work done by editor and director. You're going to need a bigger pose. This is obviously the most iconic, but it's not necessarily my favorite. I think it's important that it's understated. We've still only gotten the briefest of looks at the shark, so we haven't really gotten to see just how bad it can be. My car doesn't weigh 3 tons. Another scene that clearly shows us that Quint has kind of lost his marbles. I love how tense this incredible music is. One of my favorite scores of all time. And here's the adventure music that I love from this film as we pursue the shark. Still unaware of just how bad things are going to go. Which this music communicates to us that things aren't going quite as smoothly as maybe they expected. And there's my favorite shot. The sunset shot is just so good. All the low light stuff here is fantastic. And here's one of the best scenes in the entire film. This is one of the timeless men things to do, to try and one up each other with stories, war stories, scars. I think this scene is technically kind of done in an inverse fashion in the film The World's End, when they're trying to discern who is a robot and who is not. And here's the moment where the relationship between these three kinds of changes and makes you really care about the well-being of all three. I love how subtle the sound design is in the background until slowly, very slowly, across like a minute and a half, the music fades in. I think this moment is kind of the crux of the third act. If it doesn't land the way that it does, it's not nearly as effective. Because it truly sets the stakes for this final confrontation and makes Quint's untimely death even more upsetting. I think, the kid death and the dog death is kind of upsetting, but I don't know, there's something about watching Quint die after this story that really is unsettling, because you've gotten time to get to know him, as opposed to the Kintner kid who you barely get to know before he becomes Shark Chow. Love how sinister a barrel can be. That shot's out of focus, but it doesn't seem to matter. It's on for such a short amount of time. It is incredible how quickly something like this can go horribly, horribly wrong. What I've read is that they did this as a day for night because the film stock that they used was not capable of shooting low light situations super well or with a lot of detail. But I think the day for night works. Here's the star that everyone likes to debate whether or not it's real or not. And if they did a day for night, then it would not be a real star. It would be rotoscoped in at a later date. That's definitely a rotoscope star. The previous shot, though, is still debated pretty hotly to today. Yeah, there's a lot of information you have to know. Oh, God. That's maybe the first clear look at the shark. Center frame. Unobscured. And this is where Quint goes full bananas. I love that tracking shot across the boat because the shot's too wide to be on the boat, so they had to be on a separate boat and tracking the shot. The reflection is brilliant. And this is one of the times that makes me wish that I'd actually read Moby Dick in high school, like I should have. But also, you know, Moby Dick is a massive tome that I don't necessarily have the time to read even now as a graduated student who can just pick which books he reads. But it is a book that I want to tackle at some point. Just because it's considered one of the classics, and it's referenced so heavily. Old Man and the Sea is also kind of one of those stories that I think probably inspired this this film to some degree. This feels like a good old boy's adventure right here. Nothing's wrong yet. shark goes right by the camera. It looks a bit goofy, but it's effective most of the rest of the film. We also need to see Brody be able to hit the shark from at least a respectable distance. What hurts my brain is that during this period of filmmaking, so much of this film would have to be redone in ADR and sound design, because the cameras and the sound equipment wasn't really great enough to capture this stuff as well as it needed to be eventually. If you want to see a lot more of the behind the scenes or hear more behind the scenes, I'd recommend the making of Jaws. I think it's a fascinating documentary that's totally well worth your time. I actually have the 4K Blu-ray, which comes with essays and pictures from the set and all kinds of behind the scenes material. And this is where things go from bad to worse. It's incredible how tense a movie with a fake shark can be, in just the way that it constructs its moments. I love how quickly Quint is proven wrong. This is when we truly know that things are in a very bad shape. We finally get to see some land, some sense of hope. Except that's not what we're really going to do. Anytime I've been out in the water far enough away from land, I'd start to get extremely concerned. If the engine starts to chug-a-lug like this, terrifies me. I haven't mentioned it here. I did mention it in the intro, but this boat actually did sink with all of the camera equipment on it. But luckily back then they processed foam with a saline type solution, so they didn't lose any of the film that they'd shot in the cameras that were on board. This is where at least two of the men start to realize how screwed they are. And of course John Williams is going to reflect the farewell and adieu song, kind of folk song that keeps being sung by Robert Shaw. This moment hurts my soul. Some more great editing jokes. Never quite been on a fishing expedition like this, but I imagine it's not fun. I love how this is the first time that Robert Shaw's Quint decides to actually listen to Hooper. It's only when he's kind of ruined all other plans of action and burning out the engine. When I think, like most people, as a kid, I saw this film on television during a 4th of July marathon. Don't recommend it. Especially if you're about to go on a beach vacation. But as a kid, this scene always bothered me because I truly thought that Hooper died here. I wasn't exactly the smartest, but I really liked Hooper's character, so I would have been really sad if he had been the one that bit the bullet at the end of this third act. That's a real shark right there, obviously. They did get quite a bit of shark footage. I'm trying to remember who filmed the shark stuff, the real shark. Some more brilliant sound design that truly spooks you if you don't know that's coming. I love how chaotic this scene is. Cannot seem to find who did the underwater real shark footage that they use in this film, sadly. Real shark. Still real shark. Still a real shark. As I was saying, as a kid, watching the Kintner boy be killed at the beginning really messed with me. Because, I mean, this film is PG, so technically it can pretty much be shown on television. But this, by far, was the scene that bothered me the most. It's just genuinely upsetting. Does not matter how fake the shark looks, this is real to me. Still makes me uncomfortable to this day. as much as Robert Shaw's character was an ass, this is still genuinely upsetting to watch. And from here on out, I mean, obviously there's a lot of blood still left in that scene. From here on out, the film kind of just rockets to the ending. Super effective in that regard. So as a kid, I really only saw this movie in bits and pieces on television in between being forced to talk to family members. I think they wanted me away from the television so I wouldn't see how horrifying this movie can get. But I do love... I think this is one of the great film endings of all time. So brilliantly staged, the stakes keep getting raised. And they're, like, legit sinking a boat. It's fun to watch. So close yet so far from the shore, I think, is the other thing that really makes this horrific. What's sad is how devolved the film sequels to this get, is how dumb they become. Like, the second is just kind of a recycling of the best moments from this film, but not as good. The third one's in 3D at SeaWorld and is hot trash, and then the fourth one we have a psychic shark. And Michael Caine. It's weird how surreally beautiful this shot is. A shark in many, many different pieces melting and disappearing into a pool of its own blood is... So when I grew up and finally was able to watch this movie all the way through, I was really happy to learn that Hooper does survive the film. Because, I mean, aside from Chief Brody, he's like the best character in this film. That's my feeling right now. I don't know what day of the week it is, unless I'm literally looking at the time and date on my computer. Just a fantastic ending shot. Production designer Joseph Alves Jr., fantastic. Really makes this town feel lived in. I mean, it kind of is, but also all the stuff that they had to build to make it fully authentic, fantastic. Rexford Metz is the underwater photographer. Script supervisor Charles Z. Bryant. Sorry, threw me off for a second. Just a fantastic way to end the film. And just a gorgeous resolution. Here we are. Ron and Valerie Taylor, who did the live shark footage. But I love the ending theme for this film. It just kind of resolves everything in a typical John Williams fashion that feels epic and brilliant. So many great performers in this film. Yeah. I forgot that the interviewer was Peter Benchley, who wrote the book. But a fantastic film. One of the all-time greats. One of the most brilliant films in history. And that's the 1975 Spielberg film that is Jaws. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this little chat through the film. I'll probably re-edit this also so that way it can be listened to as a podcast and not necessarily as a full film critical analysis or commentary. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this this walk through memory lane of the 1975 film that kicked off the blockbuster craze that still is a part of Hollywood today. We got plenty more incredible films coming up. Like I said, The Goonies is next, another Spielberg story, but it is directed by Lethal Weapon director Richard Donner. Fantastic cast in that one, including a really young Sean Astin and Josh Brolin, who would go on to play Thanos, and also be Llewellyn Moss in No Country for Old Men. And then following that, we will hit up the Spanish language film from Guillermo del Toro from the early 2000s. I'm, of course, talking about Pan's Labyrinth, a brilliant film. I watched it 3 times the week that we screened it for our live club members. And I did not regret a single one of those screenings. So I watched it once to refresh myself, and then I watched it again to record the commentary track for our members. And then, last but certainly not least, I watched it live with the rest of the group. And every single time I noticed something different. And it was so much fun to watch that film again and again because it truly is a masterpiece. Likewise, I love Jaws. And the Goonies is a little bit problematic, which I didn't mention at the time in the commentary track, but will in a supplemental video. I still love all 3 of these films that will make up the films that we've announced in the summer movie series. Sadly, the last film, which at this time you still don't know, I had to cancel the commentary track for that for a variety of reasons, which I'll touch on when that video goes live. But regardless, I hope you enjoyed your time today with Jaws and myself. I've been Patrick Smith. I am the curator and host of Movie Club, and if I don't see you around, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.